For dogs have compassed me, the assembly of the wicked have enclosed me. They pierced my hands and my feet. I count all my bones. They look, they stare at me. They part my garments among them and cast lots on my clothes. Hili lama azaftani, my God, why have you forsaken me? But be not thou far from...
Hello, good morning. Welcome to Line by Line Bible Studies. We're continuing today in the book of John, the Gospel of John. We're going to begin studying at verse 18, but we're going to start reading from the beginning of the chapter. Okay, here we go. Now before the feast of the Passover, when Jesus knew that his hour was come, that he should depart out of this world unto the Father, having loved his own which were in the world, he loved them unto the end. And supper being ended, the devil having now put into the heart of Judas Iscariot, Simon's son, to betray him, Jesus, knowing that the Father had given all things into his hands, and that he was come from God, and went to God, he riseth from supper, and laid aside his garments, and took a towel, and girded himself. After that he poureth water into a basin, and began to wash the disciples' feet, and to wipe them with the towel wherewith he was girded. Then cometh he to Simon Peter, and Peter saith unto him, Lord, dost thou wash my feet? 1 second. Jesus answered and said unto him, What I do thou knowest not now, but thou shalt know hereafter. Peter saith unto him, Thou shalt never wash my feet. Jesus answered him, If I wash thee not, thou hast no part with me. Simon Peter saith unto him, Lord, not my feet only, but also my hands and my head. Jesus saith unto him, He that is washed needeth not to save to wash his feet. He that is washed needeth not save to wash his feet, but is clean every whit. And ye are clean, but not all. For he knew who should betray him. Therefore said he, Ye are not all clean. So after he had washed their feet, and had taken his garments, and was set down again, he said unto them, Know ye what I have done to you? Ye call me Master and Lord, and ye say well, for so I am. If I then, your Lord and Master, have washed your feet, ye also ought to wash one another's feet. For I have given you an example, that ye should do as I have done to you. Verily, verily, I say unto you, the servant is not greater than his Lord, neither he that is sent greater than he that sent him. If ye know these things, happy are ye if ye do them. I speak not of you all. I know whom I have chosen, but that the scripture may be fulfilled, he that eateth bread with me hath lifted up his heel against me. Now I tell you before it come, that when it is come to pass, ye may believe that I am he. Verily, verily, I say unto you, he that receiveth whomsoever I send receiveth me, and he that receiveth me receiveth him that sent me. When Jesus had thus said, he was troubled in spirit, and testified and said, Verily, verily, I say unto you, that one of you shall betray me. Then the disciples looked one on another, doubting of whom he spake. Now there was leaning on Jesus' bosom one of his disciples, whom Jesus loved. That was a bad reading. Let me try again. Now there was leaning on Jesus' bosom one of his disciples, whom Jesus loved. Simon Peter therefore beckoned to him that he should ask who it should be of whom he spake. He then, lying on Jesus' breast, saith unto him, Lord, who is it? Jesus answered, He it is to whom I shall give a sop, when I have dipped it. And when he had dipped the sop, he gave it to Judas Iscariot, the son of Simon. And after the sop, Satan entered into him. Then said Jesus unto him, That thou doest, do quickly. Now no man at the table knew for what intent he spake this unto him. For some of them thought, because Judas had the bag, that Jesus had said unto him, Buy those things that we have need of against the feast, or that he should give something to the poor. He then, having received the sop, went immediately out, and it was night. Therefore, when he was gone out, Jesus said, Now is the Son of Man glorified, and God is glorified in him. If God be glorified in him, God shall also glorify him in himself, and shall straightway glorify him. Little children, yet a little while I am with you. You shall seek me, as I said unto the Jews, Whither I go, you cannot come. So now I say to you, A new commandment give I unto you, that ye love one another, as I have loved you, that ye also love one another. By this shall all men know that ye are my disciples, if ye have love one to another. Simon Peter said unto him, Lord, whither goest thou? Jesus answered him, Whither I go, thou canst not follow me now, but thou shalt follow me afterwards. Peter said unto him, Lord, why cannot I follow thee now? I will lay down my life for thy sake. Jesus answered him, Wilt thou lay down thy life for my sake? Verily, verily, I say unto thee, the cock shall not crow till thou hast denied me thrice. Let not your heart be troubled is the next words he says, though. So, because that is pretty heavy-duty news to deliver to somebody. Just like, you will betray me. Here, have something to eat. Have a little bread. Who will betray me? And the one to whom I give the sop. And he dips it and hands it to Judas. Judas knowing. You can imagine how Satan entered into his heart at that moment. His anger at the Lord probably being thus ignited, because he knew his heart. It was in his heart to do it. Hold on a second. I don't know why I'm moving the microphone. I just mute it. All right, I missed the past 2 days because I was sick and my sinuses were bad, but we're good today. But I might have to mute it a few times. All right, so I as we read through the first 17 verses, I even felt like I was like, man, I almost feel like what to say though. When I read it, I feel like it's coming alive to me again as it's being read. I hope it comes alive for you too. But let's try to analyze it. I speak not of you all, I know whom I have chosen. He says, I have not chosen you 12, and one of you is a devil. The Lord knew who believed and who, what was it? And who would betray him? It said that that was he also knew who believed not, obviously, who could not believe. It says that you can't hear my words because you're not my sheep, as I said unto you. And this is very clear in the Gospel of John. I mean, it's pretty hard to miss it. That's why I've talked to people about, when we read the Bible, we can't let our conditioned, we need to let the scriptures come at us raw. We need to open ourselves to them, become vulnerable to what the scripture says, even if it disrupts things I believe. Meaning because of interpreting, because I've interpreted that way. I try to, when we come across a scripture that I feel like, on the surface at least, contradicts something I believe, I always try to take that head on, But the problem is, if you take that head on too much, well, you notice. That's the point of going through it, because we notice our errors. Because we read one part, and we keep having this particular idea in our mind, but then you stumble across verse after verse that contradicts certain ideas. You know, John 3:16 is the very verse that says, God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son, that whosoever, people will quote that verse to me, who would deny things like the limited atonement. You know, I'm not a huge, I mean, he died for his sheep, yes, but he died for the world too, in that sense, because for his sacrifice paid for all. If they would come, it would be effectual for them. But I get it, you know, since it doesn't benefit them, it's hard to see that he did anything for them, which of course he doesn't in that case. I mean, not really. It's not, if the sacrifice isn't effectual in bringing salvation, I see how you could say, oh, it's not for them. Fine. You know, I don't want to get into that so much as to say, well, but people who would say, oh, you know, predestination and election, no, it's all about free will. It's not all about free will, though that is how you experience life, and that's why you are responsible, because you are not God. You don't know everything. You don't know exactly what you're going to do. He knows what you're going to do before you do it, and how you respond to his provoking. He knows how Judas is going to respond to being given the sop, and how Peter, Judas, when he's given the thing to Peter, denies, not in John, but in another, I'll never deny you. Well, he basically denies, initially says, I will die for you. Judas says no such thing. Because what's in his heart? Like if Peter had received the sop, he'd be like, me? But he didn't receive the sop. Why would Jesus give it to him? Because he would deny too. I will never betray you. But, denying. Because that's the thing. There is. It's like with lust and with murder, there's lesser forms of the same sin. Denying the Lord is a form of betrayal. He that denies me before men, will I deny before the angels of heaven. So it is a significant sin. But Jesus washed his feet because as he said, you're clean. You're clean. And I think what it means is that his error comes from a pure heart. He wants to die for the Lord, but he doesn't have the faith to go through with it. And he doesn't even realize that's what's happening when it happens. He denies the Lord because he's curious. He wants to see what's happening. And he doesn't want to be, I would die. I don't know if it could be fear of death at that point. Sure, why not? I don't know. I can't impugn Peter's motives because I know the Lord looked at him as clean. Meaning because his conscience was clean. And that's the thing with the foot washing stuff. I mean, the main takeaway, of course, is that if we want to do as he did, this is a clear thing where he says, I did this for an example. You're not better than me. So if I get down on my hands and knees and wash your feet, you should do so for one another. I mean, that's the level of service I expect of you for your fellow brother. Not be afraid to do things that are humbling, that are not, like Peter was like, he tried to stop him twice. He tried to stop him twice. Now, the scripture here, he that eateth bread with me, I've lifted up his... I think that was that Doeg? Or no? Is it Psalm 69? I'm trying to guess at which psalm it is. I should just look. I thought when I was reading, I'm like, I guess I'll grab my Bible and look up the reference. That's not 69, is it? Let's see. Well, wait. Maybe I'll just cheat with looking up bread. And then we'll just look it up in the Psalms. So I didn't put this full screen. I don't, sometimes that's just too complicated. More than 250 in just, wait. Let's try it. Let's try just the Psalms. Oh, come on. Just none. Clear. There we go. All right. Psalm. Let's see if I narrow it all. Oh, there's 15 in the Psalms. Okay. Wait a second. Man. 41. Yes, 41. It wasn't 69. Okay, I was off. Psalm 49. 41, verse 9, sorry. Yeah, we cover this one. Mine enemies speak evil of me. When shall he die and his name perish? Oh, I can't go down anymore. I gotta drag it up, that's why. And if he come to see me, he speaketh vanity. His heart gathereth iniquity to himself. When he goeth abroad, he telleth it. All that hate me whisper together against me. Wait. Is that... Let me get the verse in there. That's just so annoying. There we go. And verse 8. An evil disease, say they, cleaveth to him, and now that he lieth, he shall rise up no more. And this is the verse. David was speaking of his life, but in so doing, he prophesied of Christ being the ultimate King of Kings. David is the type of that messianic Savior King. He saved the people of Israel from Goliath. And so he was a kind of a savior. A kind of, that talks about saviors in the Old Testament, so don't get freaked out. Someone who delivers, someone who brings, deliverance from trouble or evil or whatever. Yea, mine own familiar friend, in whom I trusted, which did eat of my bread, hath lifted up his heel against me. But thou, O Lord, be merciful unto me, and raise me up, that I may requite them. That's what and so, what you see in that, this sounds like David was sick, right? And he said, but notice the language is of rising from sickness, or like from death. They want him to die. Christ, the ultimate, he does die, and rises from the dead. Like this, it says, as Jonah was in the belly of the whale, or of the fish, actually is what it says. That's what it in the Old Testament says. For 3 days or whatever, so shall the Son of Man be in the heart of the earth. And so, in that example, people think that Jonah lived in the belly of the fish for 3 days. I remember, first encountering from E.W. Bullinger, the idea that he died. That he died when the fish swallowed him, and then when he was vomited up, he rose from the dead. Probably more plausible. That's like an easier miracle. It's more direct. Why? Keep him alive. You don't want to be alive in the belly of the fish. Forget it. And he's got to, when you read Jonah's account, it could be inferred that it's implied that he died. I guess, or it's a very logical conclusion. Okay. So, speak not of you all, I know whom I have chosen. Okay, so we got the scripture from Psalm 41. The idea of lifting up his heel against me means, to kick me when I'm down, essentially, because David in the psalm is down. He's down. And they're hoping he's going to die. But then, one of the things about Christ is that it says he suffered more than any man. Or it could be, all that means is he suffered the worst kind of suffering. It's like, because he was betrayed by his friends, by his friend per se, by someone who he had, who ate of his own bread, the bread of his table. Now, I tell you before it comes, when it's come to pass, you may know and believe. He's telling ahead of time that they would know about the betrayal, because it's something that they didn't get at the time. And now, with hindsight, they're laying it out real clear. I say to you, whoever receiveth whomsoever I send receives me. It could be told them, but he tells them ahead of time. So he was troubled in spirit. I wonder what that troubled is in Greek. Let's see. Verse 19, 21. Troubled in spirit. Different Not the one we had. Remember when he was troubled in spirit? He groaned in his spirit. Actually, I think is what it says. Different word. This is tarasso. I think it was close. It had that asso in it, didn't it? I forgot what that word was. Seems similar. Whatever. Properly to put in motion, to agitate back and forth, to shake to and fro. Figuratively, to set in motion what needs to remain still at ease. To trouble. Oh, yeah, to trouble. Agitate. Cause inner perplexity. Yeah. Okay. So he testified. So whatever. He became troubled in spirit and said, "Verily, verily, I say, one of you shall betray me." Because the thing is, Judas, Jesus knows he's going to betray him. But from a human standpoint, I'm guessing there's no sign of this. Jesus knows all about Judas, what a thief he is. The other disciples don't seem to know or notice Judas's problems. And so the Lord knows. And in a way, it almost seems like he provokes it. And the truth is, oftentimes, that's the case. The Lord will, when it comes to the wicked, he will put the thing in front of them that they covet so that they may destroy themselves. Just as he puts things in front of us to bring us to the Lord. He opens our eyes to the truth, and then he shows us things that bring us to Christ. But when it comes to the wicked, it's not like, he thinks, I can't interfere. That's not true. He puts hooks in their jaws, is what it says. Because predestination works both ways. That's a truth that people don't like. Because it sort of seems to take agency out of our hands. But no, agency, we are not. Here's the thing. We may be, we have a sense of free will because of our conscience, mind, and all that, right? And we don't know everything. We don't know what's coming next necessarily, as far as what we're going to do. But, and so, what was the other word? We have that kind of liberty, but at the same time, we are not blank slates. We're not blank slates that could be anything. Each of us is uniquely ourselves. Even when you have two people that are twins, they're uniquely themselves. They're very similar. They have similar thought processes and stuff. Very often, naturally occurring parts of their makeup are going to be the same. Much like also sometimes there's a lot of family similarities. There's family traits that get passed down. Now, that doesn't mean that the children have to suffer for the sins of the parents. They often do inadvertently. And of course, if they continue in the same things, they suffer the same fate. That's also true. That if they continue in but if they turn, they don't have to. Because we do have a sort of agency. We know better. But oftentimes we do not. And the truth is that really none of us would on our own come to God, ever. And we think we would, but no, he always has been drawing us. And that's the grace of God towards us. But he doesn't have to be, that doesn't matter. I've often talked about the Garden of Eden, how the temptation is built in to the garden. God planted the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. People don't generally emphasize that. I do. Because it sticks out like a sore thumb to me. Like, wow, he put that there. He put that there. He knows Judas is going to betray him. And he ticks him off to make sure it happens. I mean, he goes, and then so in the story, the disciples are like, who's he talking about? No idea. They're like, Judas? Nah. No one's thinking Judas. They all think, none of us would betray you. That's what they're thinking. Because they all seem, because the 11 of them are totally true believers. They didn't just see miracles. The truth that he was the Son of God truly entered in their hearts, and the wisdom to know that they had to follow him no matter what. They had that wisdom. Judas was following for other reasons. He saw the miracles, he was impressed, but he also saw the bag and was impressed and thought, I'm getting on board. Follow me. And Jesus said, you also will be one of my apostles. I chose him, and he didn't. Have I not chosen you 12, and one of you is a devil. Now, and here's the thing, because it tempts one to go and say, well, it's just fixed from the beginning as far as based on your DNA or something. That's not true. There's a very prominent Christian apologist who's a very, I think, sincere believer who, but anyways, he was diagnosed as a psychopath, and he actually tried to murder his father when he was young. Something he doesn't seem at all proud about, But what's his name? Oh, you might know his name, right? It doesn't matter. He deleted his YouTube channel on purpose. Whatever. David Wood or Woods. I forgot if it's plural or singular. Anyways, but and Paul the Apostle was ready to murder people, or to bring them to be, he was like essentially an authoritarian enforcer, like the kind of thing I would hate. Like what Paul the Apostle was is the kind of person that makes me want to get violent. You know what I mean? Because he is that kind. Not that I do. Certainly with my speech. It makes me want to make them sting. You know what I mean? It makes me want to, people like the Apostle Paul, who do stuff like that, go around persecuting people for their beliefs and getting them thrown in prison. I hate that. And people that do it, I have like no respect for that. To me, it's like, they're like, oh, they're just doing their jobs. I'm like, that's the Nuremberg defense. When the heck did we, they said, I went to school, they taught us these things. I don't know why adults my age don't know this. But the education system does tend to fail to educate for some reason. That's why I always called my home school home education. They don't call it the Department of Schooling, they call it the Department of Education. So it's tempting to think of that as like fixed. But granted enough light, granted enough grace from the Lord, anyone can be turned by God to salvation. That's why I believe it. He came for, there's no one outside his reach. As far as there's a point at which, the judgment goes, they go over the edge. But like just in the raw state of things, especially in our ignorance, especially in ignorance, because that's what Paul said. I did these things ignorantly. And then, I try to remember that too. Like when I said all those hard words against Paul. I'm just saying that's my feelings, but I know what the Lord would say. I know what the Lord would say. He's like, well, forgive them for they know not what they do. Yeah, they're using the Nuremberg defense and basically saying like, well, I have to do this authoritarian stuff because I'm being commanded to by my boss, so which I find despicable, and is despicable. Even so, God forgive them. They know what they do. People who just mandate things for people to take, treatments and such, without, considering that's forcing someone to participate in an experiment is a crime against humanity. I've said that before, I believe, right? Forcing someone to, all those employers should be sued. Every employer that mandated that their employees get get shots or any kind of medical treatment should be sued, especially because that medical treatment was experimental. It was not fully And the manufacturer got immunity. Well, you know what? Your employer isn't immune. Sue them. If the vaccine harms someone, I keep saying that word, they should sue their employer that forced them to get it. Okay? Because you can't sue the drug company. Whatever. So Simon Peter beckoned to John, traditionally this is John. Traditionally people say, oh, that disciple whom Jesus loved, that's John, the author of the gospel. He doesn't want to name himself, but he calls himself the one whom Jesus loved. So he also claims to have outrun Peter. So it's fine. Jesus loved all his disciples. He, as it said before, his own. What did it say? He loved them to the end. He loved them unto the end. That's right. So when he lists himself as one whom he loved, it's actually a very humble statement when you think about it, because he's saying just another one of his disciples, because he loved, or maybe it is elevating himself. I don't know. To me, I don't think it's maybe that's why John and his brother were bold enough to have their mom ask if they could sit on his right hand and his left. So anyways, I need a drink of water here. My mouth's starting to sound like I hear it crackling in my earphones. I'm like, there's something wrong here. All right. And then he's lying on, I imagine they're just sitting all on a long bench, and they're kind of packed in at the table. And so he's lying on Jesus' breast, meaning he's laying up against him. I don't really imagine that he was like laying with his head in his lap or something weird like that. When it's that, I just think they were packed in, and he was sitting right next to Jesus, laying against him, against his chest. So they were right next to each other, right on top of each other, basically. So at the table, and Jesus answered, because it's hard to put that, anyways, whatever, because they were tied in. That's what I figured. That's how I figure it. But maybe that's not exactly right. Okay, but it's not important. I just, because people often will try to make too much of that. Like they try to read goofy stuff into it, other than just close affection. Jesus is like 30. John was probably like 18. So he's a very young man, I believe, right? John was pretty young, we reckon. Well, because he was one of the last apostles that was supposed to have died. So he lived very long. He lived longer than many of the other apostles, and was one of the last to die, if not the last. I believe traditionally he is the last one who died. And when he had dipped the sop, he gave it to Judas Iscariot, the son of Simon. So he took a piece of bread, he dipped it, and then he gave it to Judas. And he just said, he just says what he's like, who will betray you? He said, Lord, who is it? And he says, he it is to whom I shall give a sop when I have dipped it. And he dipped the sop and he gave it to Judas. Now, I don't know if they all heard that, or is that what just John heard? You know what I mean? I assumed Judas and everyone else heard this. But I guess when I hear Peter beckon to him, come on. He looked at John, like Jesus said something. I'm sure Peter and John had this thing where Jesus would say something weird, and Peter looks at him. And he's like, "You're sitting right there. Ask him." Look. Peter looks at John like, "Hey, ask. What does that mean?" That he knows they're not going to like, because they can't hear him anyway. So what's the point, right? If he's going to come out and spell it out, they'll just execute him faster. But anyway, so no man at the table knew for what. Oh, so then Jesus says that you do quickly. No one at the table knew for what. John didn't understand. even though he just heard that, we presume he must at least have gotten the idea that, whoa, Jesus just gave that to Judas. Jesus says, what you do quickly. Well, I just told on you. So if he doesn't go now, the apostles, the rest of them might start to talking and to start talking to Judas. Because you would imagine like that. You can't go far after that without people, especially John, right, having something to say. But no man knew for what intent he said this on them. Some of them thought, Jesus may have just accused him, but he also has told him to go out and do something. So they're still, it's all in the flow of things. Like a lot of this they didn't understand until later, and it's not clear that everyone even heard. Because it would be hard for me to, I guess it is kind of hard to believe that Jesus is in front of everybody, in the hearing of all. Now Judas, the fact that he would hear him, and they were all paying attention. Here's the thing. They were at the table, and he was talking, and they were kind of paying attention to him. And Judas was close enough for him to hand him a sop. And John was much closer than that. So, I don't know. I still go with the thought that it was maybe not announced loudly, but at least right there it was heard. And it's hard to imagine, though, that their eyes wouldn't light up like, what? He just gave it to Judas. But then again, we have hindsight. And in the moment, they may have again, Jesus says so many weird things. I said, if you were with him, we're used to it. We have the Bible. But from their perspective, he talked, even the Pharisees, who is the Son of Man? He talked about himself in strange ways that is unusual. Obviously, never a man spake like this man, is what they said, right? Because he had the bag, they thought that he meant go do your errands, get those things we have need of against the feast. They thought that's what it meant. What you do, go on, get going, Or that he should give some of the poor. Like he had some tasks that Jesus had given them. They assumed that there was that his leaving was innocent. But he went immediately out, and it was night. Yes. When he was gone, I was just, that's part of the symbolism too, because it was dark. We walk while we have the light. When the darkness comes, no man can walk. And Judas blindly goes out and seals his fate. But that part, the fulfilling of the betrayal, the one that he took in, the one that he made part of his apostles, who turned against him, that had to be he had to be betrayed by one who was close to him, because that's part of what it meant to suffer as a man, to suffer, like betrayal, like someone you trusted, or even though he knew he would betray him, still he treated him like one he trusted. He kept him with him. He put him in his inner confidences. Now is the Son of Man glorified, and God glorified in him, because this is again, this is the moment, the big moment. This isn't the second, it's just coming. Sorry. If God be glorified in him, God shall also glorify him in himself. The fact that, Christ doing God's will would glorify the Son of Man, and God in the Son of Man. And because of that, God would, again, glorify the Son in himself, and straightway glorify him. It seems like a lot of, glorify lingo there that's a little bit. But wait, I want to see what that is. Straightway, that's the word that I think that Mark uses all the time. Straightway, immediately, Okay. And it was night. Okay, straightway. There it is. Let's see what we got. Oh my God, too far over is what I got. Oh, great. It's taking forever to load. Well, I guess we won't. We'll find out in a couple of minutes what that is about, but we'll just go on. All right. So straight, because Christ, he was immediately glorified in his resurrection. Obviously, immediately means upon the accomplishing of the act specified, because he has to go to the cross. It has to be done. But this is one step closer. Little children. Yet a little while. No, it's a term of affection. Little children. However, youthus. Huh. Oh, it's two. Wait, adjective. Straight of direction as opposed to crooked. Upright. Or an adverb immediately. Straightway glorify, so it's an adverb. So it does mean straight. Straightway, Anyway, so I'm with you a little while longer. You shall seek me, and as I said to the Jews, whither I go, you cannot come. So now I say unto you, because I go to the Father. I'm going to die. A new commandment I give unto you, that you love one another, as I have loved you, that you also love one another. He's going to go into great detail on that in chapter 15. By this shall all men know that ye are my disciples, if ye love one another, have love one to another. That's one thing I remember I've told someone. When you go to find a church, you want to find a place where people treat each other with love. And like Jesus, they wash each other's feet. Not where they treat each other like dirt. And they insult one another. And they run each other down. They gossip behind one another's backs and chatter. You want them to exhibit a loving spirit. You better... Because, the point of being in a church is to associate and to act as a body. You don't want to be unequally yoked with unbelievers. And if you don't have love one to another, then you're really not his disciples. I mean, I can't tell. I'm like, Now, there's obviously, you bite and devour one another and all that kind of stuff. But I've often said it's not all or nothing with human beings. God wants 100% righteousness. He demands it of us. That's why humans perish. We sin. We're sinners. We have no hope on our own. But through Christ, we have hope. And we have also light and love. People, Jesus said even the heathen love the people who they love. Everyone, I love my kids. Oh, congratulations. You've done marvelously. Of coming up with, meaning that's good. Well, that's like, what that is? That's like minimum requirements for like high school. We gotta have the minimum amount of this, the minimum amount of that, minimum amount of that. So love your family. Yeah. You know why? Because people who don't are awful. I don't love my kids. I hate them. I mistreat them. Right? That. Of course. So it's not impressive when you love those who you're supposed to love by nature or who love you. But I mean, in the church, you're going outside your family. So you're loving your neighbor more likely and your stranger, and they become your brother. But if you're entering into a group of people, that's for me been the problem, is because I enter into groups that are already, and maybe they love each other, but they don't necessarily love me. Or I hear sometimes that they don't love one another, or that there's a lot of backbiting and stuff like that. And that's, I don't know, I avoid such things, but, if you're already involved in such things, the loving thing to do is to try to fix it. And love each other better. Because often we do love each other. Right? I've said there's no one in the world I love more than my wife. Right? I love her more than anybody in the whole world. I do. But I don't love her like I would like to. I don't love her enough. I don't. Because there's been times when I don't, where I've seen my love fall short. I wish I loved her so much that it overwhelmed my faults. It overwhelmed some of my faults. So I've never been unfaithful, in the truest sense of that word. But the thing is, sometimes I'm inconsiderate. I remember I used to be coming home late and I wouldn't call and stuff like that. Now that was more when I was younger, tell you the truth. I still can be inconsiderate because it's possible, right? But it's like if I loved her more, maybe I'd always be thinking of her, right? And that's the thing. We may love one another, but we still sometimes hurt each other. And that doesn't mean you don't love. It's just your love is somewhat defective. My love is somewhat defective. I need to have the love of God in me, which goes beyond my defective love. And God's love, God's perfect love, when that enters into us, and we look at our brother with the eye of love, or our wife, or the people around us, the eye of true Christian love. Like I said, I even have that true love in the Christian sense. But like I said, even that, sometimes, I always, I liked what it says about Curious George, the monkey. Curious George. He was a good little monkey, but sometimes even good little monkeys, forget. Sometimes good little monkeys forget. They forget what it means to be a good little monkey, or they forget to do a good thing. Sometimes that's my regret, is I forget to do a good thing. Like in the moment, it doesn't occur to me to do a good thing. And then later I think, oh, there was a good thing I should have done. I remember I used to tell my wife, you're worried about that? Like, come on. The wicked don't sorrow over their sins. And don't sorrow over much over yours. Because the Lord loves you, and so do your brethren. Have love one to another. That's what makes you a disciple of the Lord. That's how people will be able to tell. When you don't love one another, they'll laugh at you like, they're Christian, right? They're Christians. Look at these Christians, what they're doing. That's so Christian, the way you hate and bite and devour one another. And so he says that, but Peter's still distracted by the "where are you going?" question. Where are you going, Lord? And Jesus says to him, well, where I'm going, you can't follow me now, but you will follow me afterwards. And it's not, I know he means to die and to rise, and to also, he that overcometh will I grant to sit with me in my throne. Even as I also overcame, we will go where he went. We can't go. We can only follow afterwards. And partly, one of the things that was, they had to carry on Jesus' message. That's why he made them his apostles. And of course, Peter can't go with him. He has to deny him. He can't be captured now and taken. It's an important lesson for him, too. And for us. I like Peter's example. He was the apostle. The Catholic Church thinks so highly of him that they claim their entire authority based on the idea that they're his successors. That the Bishop of Rome is the successor, the linear successor to Peter. That's how revered he is as an apostle. And because of the things Jesus said to him, I give you the keys of the kingdom. And so that's how revered he is. And why do I want to bring it up? Well, that he would make such mistakes. He denied the Lord. He often is the one that asks the questions that, that gets him kind of, it seemed to me a little bit, you get a little bit of a rebuke. He walked on the water with Jesus, but then he doubted and began to sink. Drink water. And so, why can't I follow you? He doesn't get it, of course, what he means. Like, he still thinks in terms, he doesn't think, first thing, he doesn't think Jesus is about to die. He doesn't think we're talking about heaven or anything here. He thinks, you going back to Galilee? Why can't I come with? And he's like, if it's dangerous, I will lay my life down for your sake. He wants to save Jesus. That's one of the things about Peter. Peter believes in the Lord, and he is very defensive of him. He even attempts to defend him when they come to take him. So, we know he's not a coward, but he's confused. He didn't necessarily, and then he didn't want to, so he denied knowing the Lord. Why can't I follow thee? I will lay my life down for your sake. We all think that. We all think, I will die before I would deny the Lord. I know I could deny him, pushed to the extreme. The words would come out of my mouth. I don't want them to. I'm pretty sure they could, or maybe not. I don't know. See, I don't know. I am pretty stubborn. I'm just saying that, I would, until I see myself tortured to deny the Lord, I won't know. I won't really know until I've walked in those shoes. You know what I mean? There have been times in my life where I didn't want to mark myself out as, I never liked being misunderstood as a Christian. And sometimes being identified with other Christians has been something I didn't want because I differ with them. So, I was always trying to set myself as, because I did believe differently, and I found many of the things that were popularly believed to be odious, and I still find many things that are popularly believed to be not good, like rapture and all this stuff. But I've changed my attitude towards the people who believe them, because you can't keep reading Jesus and then be bitter at people because they don't agree with the doctrine. They're blind. I myself have seen my eyes opened to things, so it's like I know that it happens, that before that I couldn't see. So why should I? So to be angry at people for not taking my point of view that I had to go through stuff to get to is just ridiculous. It's like the one who goes, pay what thou owest. It's that spirit of being, taking all the grace for yourself, but not willing to share it with others. And some people want, of course, there's also that, what I mean is, well, that certainly happens where people are basically, they're Christian, they're forgiven, but then they act very badly towards their fellow men. It can be, and a lot of times it's verbal abuse. I see a lot of that with people in church. Well, not in all churches, but there's verbal abuse is something, and it's not a big deal. It's not murder. It's just the first step. It's just one of the steps. Maybe not steps, but it's along the path. Because there's no one who ever murdered someone that wouldn't say bad things to people. It's like they say about certain drugs being gateway drugs. It doesn't necessarily mean you use that and you go on to do heroin and whatever the new fad is, with fentanyl. I have no idea. I know fentanyl exists, but I haven't, that stuff I've never even encountered. It's so dangerous. You touch a grain of it, and I don't even know why people mess with it. It seems insane. But everyone who does fentanyl probably tried some of those gateway drugs first. It's rare, for the most part. People start off with the lighter stuff. So that's why you shouldn't start at all, because you don't know where it's going to end up. And maybe you'll be one of those people that just becomes a marijuana smoker for the rest of their life, Or maybe he'll become one of those people that becomes a heroin addict and dies young. Neither position is a position I'd want to be in. So, verily, verily, I say unto thee, the cock shall not crow till thou hast denied me thrice. Yep, the cock will not crow till you've denied me thrice. There's differing. This is one of those things that, like, in the Gospels, there's different. The cock shall crow twice before they deny me thrice. Or there's like several different formulations, and there are people who get into analyzing it and showing how they harmonize it. I mean, it's possible to harmonize them. I just take it as, I don't know, like I don't know. Maybe that's one of the details. There was some confusion. I don't know. For some people, it's worrying to say that anything in the Bible would not be 100% accurate. Like anything. There's like people who are really worried about that. Like the days in Genesis got to be literally days. That's got to be that way. Why? Because that's how I've been interpreting it, and I can't change my mind. That's what. That's all. The only reason why. That's the only reason why. Really. There's nothing in the Bible that says, no, you have to interpret everything literally. That's ridiculous. I was saying that the other day. You will eat my flesh and drink my blood. Oh, is that literal? Well, of course not, right? And then more than that, even sometimes Jesus gets sarcastic. Make to yourselves friends of the mammon of unrighteousness, and that they may be able to receive you into everlasting habitations in Luke 16. It's on this, every word of it's false. He was being sarcastic. He would say, we would talk about the taxes, and he would say, cheat a little bit. so you don't get cheated, right? It was something like that. It was the saying of an old Scotsman or something like that. I forgot how he used to say that. But I don't really think that's a good idea. I don't think so. But that attitude, no. So anyways, we'll wrap it up there. We'll continue in 14 tomorrow. Thanks for Monday. Sorry, like I said, I either had a tremendous allergy attack or I got sick for 2 days, because it was basically that. Anyways, thanks for joining me. I look forward to being back again on Monday to continue the Gospel of John with chapter 14.
For dogs have compassed me, the assembly of the wicked have enclosed me. They pierced my hands and my feet. I count all my bones. They look, they stare at me. They part my garments among them and cast lots on my clothes. Hili lama azaftani, my God, why have you forsaken me?